Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose.
How you doing this morning, Jared?
Awesome, bro. Feeling good, man. I see 80s in the forecast. Summer's coming here. It's my time to shine. So I feel good, buddy. How are you doing?
It's your time. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Feeling good as well. 29, feeling
Just had a
fine.
birthday. Happy day after your birthday.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Ready to make my last year of my 20s the best one yet. Let's go.
Right, man. That's good. I was just trying to reflect back when I was 29 is when I first moved to Fort Collins, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, feels like it started a whole new chapter in our life. We moved down here and raised our family, had a whole career, and now I got a podcast with you, my friend.
There it is.
So
well, I'm grateful that you moved over here.
I got to tell you, it was all Andrea's idea. I had picked California. She picked Fort Collins.
Thank you, Andrea.
Honestly, she's responsible for most of the good decisions in our marriage. But yeah, it's good, man. So what did you take away from Mr. Ryan McDonagh, our first UFC fighter that we had on the show?
Yeah, man. Great episode. Powerful story. Love that guy. I took away to not take your loved ones for granted. You know, I called my brother right after that episode and my mom and told them I loved them. And I also took away that it's never too late to chase your dreams. I can't believe that he didn't start training until he was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Didn't have any wrestling background, nothing, and had a full-time job with shadow boxing and Coors trucks, you know what I mean? And then he's in the UFC. So that was very inspiring. It even made me think, and I know that's not my dream, but it did make me toy around with it. It was like, well, I just turned 29. If I wanted to go to the UFC, I could. Like, look at Ryan McDonagh. That's how much his story inspired me. So that's what I took away. What about you?
Man, a couple things. I agree with what you said, but then what really hit me was the fact that being in a small town in Nebraska, how many people tried to tell him his dream was impossible. And almost like that analogy I think you've used, Ali, with the crabs in the bucket and the ones trying to escape, and the guy's like, don't worry about the other ones, will pull them back down, and they pull each other back into the bucket. And I think that's so common for so many people, those close. And it's not that they're malicious or they're evil. They're just trying to save you from the heartache that, most people from this town can't get there or won't get there. And so we'll keep you here to protect you when in fact it's hurting you. So one, that he had to change his circle and go against what everybody was telling him and believe in his dream. And two, that he achieved it after training on a blue tarp in his backyard watching YouTube videos.
Amazing.
You think about all these, you look at the highest level professions, whether it's fighting or piano or whatever, they usually have this kind of privilege, not privileged upbringing, but an upbringing with resources and, they're training in gyms and stuff. And here's a kid that's literally watching YouTube videos on a tarp in his backyard, teaching himself, and he makes it to the pinnacle of his sport, despite most of those around him not believing it was possible.
Incredible, man.
So it's just the power of belief, man. And then not only the power of belief, but action. Right, and not letting everybody else's opinion determine if you're going to believe or not.
Right. Well, speaking of not letting other people's opinions determine your beliefs, I'm excited to bring on our guest for today, man, because she has some crazy looking dances and has accumulated over 20 million views of some of her T-Rex themed dances on social media.
Yeah, I'm going to take your word on this one, Ali. When you first set her over and I'm looking at her Instagram, I'm like, oh, boy, I don't know about this one. But, yeah, we might get out of our comfort zone today. Who knows what this one will bring us?
Yeah. All right, well, let's bring her on. You ready?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, On Purpose community, I'm really excited to introduce a really special guest today, Miss Margo Miller. So Margo has a master's degree in psychology. She's a certified yoga teacher and has several holistic healing modalities and has been sober for over a decade, which you may not believe from her 20 million plus social media views. being the T-Rex girl that you can go check out. And she's really dedicated to helping people find their spirit animal and living their most authentic life. So On Purpose community, please help me welcome Miss Margo Miller. How you doing today, Margo?
Hi, doing great. Thanks for having me.
What do you think of that intro?
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, can you do that before I go on a date?
Yeah. I love intros. You're always like, man, didn't my mom pay you to say all that good stuff?
I know, right?
Well, very cool. Go ahead, Ollie.
I was just going to say, got to give people the credit they deserve, you know?
For sure.
Oh, love that. Love that.
Yeah, we earn what we get. So we are excited to have you here, and we're excited to share your story with our community because we know somebody out there is waiting for it and is in need of it. So we're blessed to have you, and we thank you for giving us the opportunity to help share it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys.
But before we get to the big stuff, we got to warm you up, right? Because you just don't jump into yoga and get right to that hard pose. I got to warm up with some down dog, maybe a little bit of child's pose.
Let me start stretching.
Yeah. So we're going to warm you up here, Margo. So I need to know, you get one food for the rest of your life. What are you taking?
You guys, I have an addiction to peanut butter. Like, it's a real addiction. Like, for sure, peanut butter.
Interesting. Like, how far does this addiction go for our community out there? Like,
it's a problem. My friends are like, please tell me you ate something more than peanut butter today. I'm like, you guys, I can't lie. Like, but like, I also have to have coffee. So can I have a liquid too? Or is it just peanut butter? Because that can get a little dry.
Yeah, no, I'll give you coffee because I need it too.
Okay.
So in case we're stranded together, we both have coffee. Yeah.
So are we talking like tablespoon just snacking out of the jar, peanut butter?
Yep. I eat peanut butter by the bar. I eat peanut butter ice cream, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, peanut butter banana. You guys, I get creative with it.
Dang. Okay. Peanut butter. All right.
Yeah, that is actually the second time we've had peanut butter.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. We had another guest who described peanut butter as the duct tape of food because you could put it on so many different things.
I need to befriend them because I feel like I'm a peanut butter chef. Like, I could create the most interesting peanut butter concoctions.
Wow. There we go, Wally. A little more peanut butter.
All right, Miss Peanut Butter. So second question is, if you could be any superhero, it could be real or made up. You could be Wonder Woman or Super Margo and have any superpower. Who would you be and what would your power be?
I don't really know the names of all the superheroes that well, but if I could, my first instinct was to say I would be a superhero that could take away all like suffering. But then I was like, wait a second, sometimes suffering, like illnesses or like pain, I'm like, but sometimes that can be our greatest teacher. So I don't know if I would do that actually. This is a tough one. I would not want people to die without having like their biggest regret resolved. That would be my superhero power.
Okay. So the regret healer. I like that.
That would be a huge one.
Yeah. I limited it down to like just death, like their one regret.
All right. Nice.
That would definitely make an impact.
Yeah, you want to go out on a YOLO, not like a regret.
That's true. All right, last warm-up question for you is, what book are you currently reading?
Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza.
Oh, nice. What's that covering for you? What are you learning in that one?
I'm kind of obsessed with him. It's all about just rewiring your brain so that you can start creating your future from a state of being in the present moment instead of living off of the conditions of your past.
Oh, nice. We were just talking about that. Ollie, was that?
Yeah.
I'm kind of confused. We've done a lot of episodes while we've been in the quarantine, but we were just talking about being in the present. Just be, I think.
Yeah, we just did an episode titled Just Be, and how it's really difficult to not equate who you are today to your past experiences, right? Like your past serves a purpose, of course, and it's important, but so many of us are, because I was this, I'm always going to be this. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Out,
Or because this happened to me, it defines me as like this kind of person. Yeah. That's amazing. Glad you guys are embodying that too.
It's a struggle, right? Like it's hard, especially like we were talking all this time of isolation. A lot of people are super uncomfortable with just being themselves. And it's a great time to explore and maybe deal with some stuff that we hadn't dealt with in the past.
Completely agree. I feel like there's no way to have some sort of introspection given that we are literally just with ourselves. And it's like one thing if it was just for like a week, but having such an extended amount of time, I really think things are shifting for people in ways that they couldn't before, and maybe in a painful way at first, but I think it's kind of required, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to your superhero thing, that a little bit of suffering, a little bit of pain is really, quite honestly, necessary for us to change into the future. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, you feeling warmed up?
I feel warmed up. I could run a marathon.
Do you need to go get peanut butter before we get to the big stuff?
I stocked up before, actually. So I prepared.
All right. Well, we love a well-prepared guest.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
That's awesome. So talk to us about your purpose in life now. Like, how did you find it, and how did you kind of get to this point now where you're holistic and doing the things that maybe you'd put off before?
Sure. I always had sort of a natural gravitation towards working with people. I just intuitively knew that that was the area I wanted to go in. And then when I got sober, I had this really amazing therapist, and I was like, amazing. This is exactly what I want to do for someone else. I realized the clinical path was a little suffocating for my soul. It works for a lot of people, but going into an office every day and being restricted in that way kind of was not necessarily in alignment with me. So I ended up having this really intense health condition, and I was bedridden for years. And it really, talk about a period of introspection. It was like quarantine for years. And so it really helped me kind of deconstruct any belief systems that I had about having to choose certain things or having to take certain paths. Like I was on track to get my doctorate. I was going to get scholarship and just become this clinical psychologist. And I realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And it was just sort of me choosing for other people. And then I kind of veered in a totally different direction for a while and just like really let myself out. And then through that evolved a mentorship program in which I'm helping people, which was the foundation of what I wanted to do. But I'm doing it in a way that really is in alignment with like my soul and my being.
Oh, very nice. So let me, if you don't mind, you mentioned in your bio and then your story leading to your purpose, sobriety. So was that a struggle in the past? And how did you know that that wasn't leading you to that life of fulfillment you were seeking?
Sure. I feel super blessed because I got sober before I could even have a legal drink. And I went to a party school. My nickname was Hank the Tank. And I just knew that addiction ran in my family. And I had this like moment of awareness where I was like, wow, this is either going to like lead me down this dark path, or I can just stop it now and create a new life for myself. And it was, it's really hard when you get sober that young. I was fortunate enough to do it and stick with it. And the people that I got, a lot of people ended up passing away that I got sober with. And so I think just as I continued down the path of sobriety, I realized how fragile life was. And that also, like, I feel like I just constantly, the theme was just constantly having things in my life that made me realize life is fragile and really to start choosing for myself and not for like what other people think I should be doing. Cause I think so much of our lives can be dictated on society.
So you got sober young. So drinking that, and you kind of fed into what people thought you were supposed to be with a nickname like Hank the Tank.
Yeah, it was hard. Like I had to kind of stop talking to all my friends. I had to just be willing to, you know, at that like stage in life, everyone just wants to go party. They're like, oh, come on, you can still drink. Like, just like they wanted that party animal out, you know, people wanted to see me in that role, and people didn't really necessarily think I was, you know, I was still getting like a 4.0 in school. I still had all my friends. It wasn't like my life went horribly downhill on the outside, but on the inside it did. And so just constantly over and over again in my life, it's like me choosing for me and trying to push away whatever other people think I should be doing or society and things like that. And that really helped kind of set me on this path for where I'm at now.
So Margo, our community, they're used to us getting really vulnerable and given some details. Can you give us, can you open up for our community just a little bit more? Because I'm sure a lot of them are going to be able to relate to the addiction piece of like, what did you have a defining moment? And maybe about that defining moment of like, okay, because that's a huge decision, especially to make at such a young age with such a big influence around you. Of what you're used to doing, you know, every weekend or whatever it is, and maybe, the defining moment, how you got that nickname, and then the steps afterwards of how you were able to stay sober. Because I would imagine that's a really difficult path to make that decision and then stick to it.
Yes. Okay. There was a massive defining moment that I was like, I will never be mind altered ever again. So what happened was I ended up, this is kind of a crazy story. I'll shrink it down so it's quick, but I ended up in rehab because I was like, I told my family, I'm like, hey, like I can't stop drinking. And there was a couple bad nights. And then I was like, all right, this is like a real problem. So I got into rehab. And when I got there, I was kind of thinking you just kind of detox and then you go back out to your normal life and start drinking again. Something didn't compute where I was like, this is a sober for life kind of thing. And in my mind, I was like, whoa, like I'm not ready for this commitment. So my ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend came into this rehab at the same time as me. And she was like, do you want to run away? And I was like, yes, please. Like, I don't even belong in here. Like, I'm just Hank the Tank. I just was in a sorority. Of course, I had a boyfriend that we had both dated who was into drugs, and I like dabbled in it a little bit with him. And I was like, whoa, this is not me. What am I doing? That kind of scared me a little bit, but not enough to be sober forever. So anyways, we had this moment where we decided to run away from rehab. We totally got away with it somehow. We like hitchhiked our way out. We were like in the forest. So we had this grand plan. She had been in and out of rehabs forever. And she was like a mastermind when it came to this. So we ran away. I just wanted to like meet up with my friends and party like everyone else. And she was a massive heroin addict. And so we ended up in this really sketchy part of San Francisco. We were in the Tenderloin and we were in some really sketchy house, and everyone was doing heroin, like shooting up heroin. And there was like blood gushing on the walls. And I was like, where am I? I was like, Hank just wanted to like go to a party with regular people. And so I just had done like a couple little like lesser drugs that night. And then she was like, we need to go back to that rehab. Otherwise my family's going to kick me out. And me being like a good friend, I'm like, okay, like we can go back. I just kind of was like rolling with it. I mean, I wanted to get out of there so bad. I was like that. I was actually pretty scared at that point. And so I had taken a couple downer pills that night, and my friend brought us back to the rehab. And at 4 a.m, she had brought back heroin with her. And I remember vaguely, I was like really out of it, kind of like on sleeping pills or something. I wasn't even sure what I had taken. And I just remember her like tying up my arm. And I was like, no, don't, like, what is happening? Like, no, don't do this. And the next thing I know, she had shot me up with heroin, which was something she had constantly been doing to people throughout her life. And long story short, I had woken up the next day super like high on heroin, pretty much kind of not my choice. And then she ended up getting kicked out. She was 5150'd, and they had this big family circle the next day. And they had kind of sent me to a detox and given me a second chance. But everyone thought that I didn't tell anyone at the time that I didn't want to do it. And so we had a big family circle in front of the rehab. All the friends and family of everyone in the rehab was in this family circle. And they constructed the story as if I had like ran away and chosen to do heroin. And that was the path I was going down, and like in front of all my family. And so my whole family just thought that I was like, I had done heroin, and it was just like not my choice. But I didn't have the tools at that time to even really realize what had just happened to me. And I didn't speak up for myself. And so I just kind of let it portray that that's what I had chosen. But it scared me so much that had happened to me that I was like, first of all, it was humiliating for me. It was traumatizing. And after that, I was like, I never want to put myself in the position. Like that was my where I was at fault, is I put myself in a really bad position. And there's so many things that like worse that could have happened that night, that I'm so grateful that I came out of it still like healthy and unscathed in that sense. But I was aware of how bad the consequences could have come, that I was like, never again.
Wow. Would you mind sharing how old like were you at that time?
I think I was 20.
So young.
Yeah, I was kind of a baby.
Wow.
And I had just been like a party girl. Like I didn't really know how quick, like, and that's the thing with addiction, is they say overnight it can go so bad. And I actually had, so our mutual boyfriend ended up passing away from heroin maybe 5 years later. He cracked his head open from a seizure and bled out in his mom's home. So it was a reminder. And a lot of people that I sponsored ended up passing away. My sober living mom, who was kind of like a mother figure for me when I first got sober, she ended up passing away. And it only takes one night. Like, that's the thing, is like in your mind, you're like, I'm just going to go. I just want to escape whatever thoughts or emotions are happening. But it just takes that one time where you pick it back up, that you lose all control over what happens. And a lot of people end up dying just in that one instance.
Wow. Now, so after this experience at the rehab, after that, was that when you had the bedridden illness that had you in bed?
No, that was like maybe 6 or 7 years later.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So they weren't together.
Yeah, they were. No. He had already passed. And that was, I was like maybe 6 or 7 years sober at the point that I got sick.
Wow. And I'm a big fan of nicknames, to be honest with you. I love giving people nicknames. I do not see you as Hank the Tank.
I know.
I just can't picture that. What was the first time where you got called Hank the Tank? You're like, this is my nickname.
You know what? I honestly can't even remember, but it evolved so much that there was a previous Facebook group called I Partied with Hank the Tank, and it's not existent anymore. But like, it was like me doing all these crazy things, and I'd walk into parties and people would be like, Hank the Tank, and I could, you guys, not gonna lie, I could drink like a sumo wrestler. Like I could just down the shots. Like it was almost like a God-given gift. Had it not led me down such dark roads, like if I could make a career out of it. No one knows how I handled my liquor so much.
Oh, well, Matt, thank you for sharing that story, and congratulations on over a decade of sobriety.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And then
I appreciate it.
Do you feel like it's all like a whole separate life when you look back?
I feel like I've had so many lifetimes in this one life that it doesn't even seem like, it literally doesn't even seem like that was me in a way. It's weird.
Yeah. And what is there? Because that's a big thing we share with our community, is not letting your past define all your tomorrows. And it seems like you've clearly separated, because if you hadn't told me that, I would never know that story. Is that something you have to work on every day, or do you have like tips on how to really separate yourself and allow yourself? Because what I share is like forgiving, right? Once I forgive my mistakes, then I can start moving forward. Do you have something similar to that, like a practice you had to do to start off?
That's a really good question. I think within myself, I think sometimes as human beings, we don't even acknowledge the level of resiliency that we have as human beings. So if you step more into the story of the greatness or the lessons or the wisdom that comes out of the traumatizing things, it can really help reshape you, instead of falling short of like, life is scary, people, so it's really, first of all, it's the story we tell ourselves. But yeah, I practice a lot of that, because I've had a lot of really sort of defining moments in my life that I could really choose to sort of let it pull me down, or I can kind of go the other way and let it reshape me. So the process of Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is why I'm studying him so much now, is really through meditation, and just being super aware of every thought and every emotion. But I think it's a process of undoing that story and really rewiring the strong emotions, because everything in your cognitive mind, or like your conscious mind, can tell you like, I'm not going to be a victim, and I'm going to start, stop drinking and I'm going to change all these habits. But if everything in you emotionally is wired towards a different story, it's hard to sometimes make that shift. So it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of consciousness. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of meditation to get your mind, body, and soul, I think, in alignment with the new story or the present or the future that you're heading towards.
Yeah, Margo. So you're definitely such a multi-dimensional person, right? Like that it does sound like a completely different Margo than the person you are today. And even now you have so many things going on, from the types of content that you put out to having your master's degree in psychology, and you have these, meditation and yoga practices. Can you tell us about how your journey developed after the rehab and getting your degree and the yoga teacher to who you have become today? Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah. So once I got sober, it was a process of really getting back on my feet and recreating my life, which I've done over and over again. And so that was kind of when I headed towards the clinical route and got my master's degree. And I had a lot of learning disabilities that I kind of overcame. And I recognized that I sort of had this photographic memory, and then I was able to excel in school, but it took me a while to sort of get through that academic part. I never really enjoyed school. I swear to God, I didn't listen to anything that the teacher said. I just used my natural photographic memory to sort of get through it. I learn a lot more through experience. And I think that's why I've gone through so many lifetimes in this one lifetime. I think that evolves me the most. But yeah, it was just, it was every time I hit or what would appear to be the worst thing that could happen to someone, like losing your health and being in bed for years, truly became my greatest gift. And I think that's what has helped me to reshape myself, is to reform what I'm telling myself. Instead of saying this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I sort of made this decision when I was ill. I'm like, look, if I never get better, whatever ounce of energy I have in the day, I'm going to make that the most fun I can possibly have. Whatever life, like I stopped caring so much about what a career, or I stopped caring about really anything on the outside. And I'm like, what brings me happiness? Like, how can I just have fun? And through finding my joy and finding what gave me energy, that's really how I started to become and shape the person that I am today, was just following what was true for me and what lit me up on the inside. It became like my internal compass, I guess.
Just the question of, does this bring me joy, or am I having fun? What was the question you would ask yourself?
Okay, yeah. So to get a little bit clearer, so when my life was wiped away, my whole path of becoming this doctor, which I was so determined to be, once that all got cleared away, I decided to really meditate on the energy of what I wanted my life to look like, how I wanted to be, and what I wanted to feel like every day living my life. So I would meditate on this energy and get really clear on it. And anything that started to come my way, and it was very slow and kind of evolved over years, that felt similar to that energy, friends, where I lived, who I surrounded myself by, even the thoughts that I would tell myself, anything that kind of was in alignment with that energy of the future I wanted, I would say yes to. So I used it as a path. So I would ask questions like, if I was my most ideal self today, even if it was laying in bed all day long, what would that look like? Like, what would a great person think who was even bedridden? So I had to just sort of become bigger than whatever was going on in my life and use that energy of what I wanted my future to look like to make my choices in the present moment.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I love having, and like for me, I would say that's kind of knowing your personal values and like your personal mission, because then I come back to every decision I make comes off of this. Instead, I think a lot of times where we struggle in life is we're making decisions based off what we think everybody else wants us to do. Right? So you kind of went through a quarantine before all the rest of us, right? Being bedridden, having to go internal instead of all this external. And I think, to kind of parallel to where we're at today, my hope is that for most of us, when we do emerge from this quarantine, that we're doing the same thing you did at that time, having reflected on who are we and who do we really want to become. And are we doing things joyfully every day and to have fun, or are we doing things because everybody expects us to do it? And that's going all the way back to your superhero power, that's how you end up in, towards the end of your life with all these regrets, is you were living for everybody else.
Exactly. It's like, are you gonna, and I ask myself this every day, it's like, if fear didn't exist, what would you choose?
Love it. Question.
So that's kind of what I started doing. And then really being committed to a life of the most fearless version of myself that I could be, and allowing whatever mistakes I made or whatever messes got created along the way. Because if you choose a path of fearlessness, let me tell you, it's going to get messy.
For sure.
So allowing myself to evolve out of the mess was what helped me not get stuck or get stopped by the external forces.
Yep. And I think that's important for our community to hear, is purpose is a big buzzword right now, right? It's going around a lot, and everybody's like, I'm living in purpose. I want to find my purpose. Well, most people don't find their purpose the first time they try something, right? Like it has to be in line with what you're hoping to achieve. And then you try things, and maybe that thing fails, but it opens up a door, or you realize, okay, that wasn't it, but it's over here. And that's kind of what I hear from your stories. You just started accepting things if they were in line with your questions, and then you tried it. So you didn't find it, I'm guessing, on the first try.
Absolutely not. And the thing is, if it even felt a sliver in alignment with my purpose, like what, that energy you talk about, or if you want to call it your purpose in life, even if it felt a sliver like it, I would choose it. And then maybe for even a few months, it would be on point. And then I would evolve into something else, and something else would come along. So you don't always wake up one day and just feel like, oh, my most purposeful life has just appeared on my doorstep. Sometimes it takes a lot of choosing and a lot of, maybe even going down a path that is so not on purpose to really set you back onto that purpose. But I think what I'm discovering more than anything in life is sometimes you can find your purpose just within yourself. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the outside. If you can really create that wholeness of who you are, like you talked about, who you become, that automatically leads you to a purposeful life on the exterior.
And I love it. And I think the key for me is that your purpose won't be found unless you're one of a rare few. Let me qualify that. Unless you're one of a rare few that just has known it forever. For the majority of us, our purpose is going to be found in action, right? Like we're going to have to take steps somewhere, and it's going to open doors. It's not just going to show up like an Amazon package at the front door, and you're going to wake up one day and be like, oh, I found my purpose, right? And that's what we really stress to our communities. Get out there and try some things. It may not happen the first time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's a good.
I lost track of how many jobs I tried before I really found something that worked. I mean, you guys, I literally had like 10, when I first moved to LA, I tried like 10 different career paths as I was getting out of clinical therapy. So you're so right. It takes a lot of trial and error, but I think that's what starts to prep you for the actual thing that is in alignment, that does feel like your purpose, that does feel like you can be you and really serve for, whoever comes into your path.
Wow. Yeah, Margo. So it sounds like your journey, that God, higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it, gave you the lesson that the world is experiencing today. And that's that quarantine, having to go inwards. I really like how you said that sometimes we can find that wholeness by going internally, and it doesn't always have to be by trying things, even though we do want to encourage that, try new things, try these things to find that. So for a lot of us today that are still in quarantine mode, still stuck at home, how can you share with us, how did you even come up with those questions? Was it a book that you were reading? Was it, that you were just in silence and in bed so long that they were kind of coming from this place within? How did you come up with those questions?
It's a combination of a lot of introspection with myself. And for me, I really had to fine tune my navigating instruments. So for me, I'm like a feeler. So I can feel into something that feels in alignment or not. I think we all have to find the method of choice, of choosing, that works for us. So that developing your internal compass is huge, but I've read so many different books. Being You, Changing the World, I probably listened to that thousands of times while I was bedridden. And it really that really helped me to deconstruct the programs of choosing things basically out of fear, like how to get out of fear and choose for me. And that was a big book.
Is that the book that goes like good and bad, right and wrong, pack?
Yeah. It has this really weird clearing statement.
Yeah. I read that one. Yeah. That was a good one.
But that one actually started to clear things out for me. And then I think becoming supernatural is great for, in terms of like you talk about becoming that wholeness within yourself. And that really helps draw in the people, places, and things that can bring into fruition the future that you want. But I think it's a kind of a dance between the internal work and the meditation and rewiring the negative thoughts that are blocking you and really finding that wholeness within yourself and then making those choices based out of fear, not out of fear, and in alignment with what you want. It's a dance between the two, I think.
Yeah. And it's not perfect, right?
Never.
Sometimes you're going to be skewed more to one side or the other. And it's allowing yourself to navigate both and realize that is creating you.
Absolutely. And I think because if you focus too much on the outside and then you step into the doing, and then if you go too much inward, and then it's like you're missing out on the experiences of putting yourself out there. So like you said, it is like a really good balance, and sometimes it waves one more the other. And I think right now we're universally having an opportunity to really go inwards and focus more on the being and recreate our internal worlds.
So Margo, I want to talk a little bit about your TRex dances.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that's how I first came across you. Is I think you had something like reposted on Barstool Sports, and I was like, I have never seen a human being move like this. Like just the way, and the first thing I would think is that you're intoxicated in some way, right? Because you're
Right.
in like most of the viral videos that I've seen are like at a club or a bar or something, and you would assume that you've had some alcohol or something, but these are totally sober dances. I mean, very attention getting. You have the whole club to stop looking at you doing your TRex stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, what the story behind the TRex, and
Sure.
also how do you build the courage and the confidence and even the desire to do that?
Really good question. So ever since I was a child, I had this weird urge where I would constantly break out into dance in public, no matter where it was. I always really enjoyed breaking out into dance. I don't know what it was, but that's part of the reason I didn't want to become this clinical figure, because I literally couldn't express that part of myself in the way I wanted to. You'd always have to be aware that if you go out at certain places, you might see clients, and you had to conduct yourself in this way that I was like, literally felt like that part of me was dying inside. So I think having that being so confined for so long, there was a period where I just really let it out. But I wish I could take credit for it. I get literally possessed. There's every time a video has gone viral, it is like not me. There's this energy that I literally channel that I don't know, but every time there's something that comes over me, and it happens a lot when I go out, just music tends to have that effect on my body. Honestly, it's a mystery. I don't know what happens to me, but I truly get possessed, and it traumatizes a lot of people, but it's a lot of fun.
How did you pick TRex of all things?
Okay, so there was this movement. I was in Miami last year, and there was this very odd movement that my body chose to strike. It was sort of like this move, and people were like, "What did I just witness with my eyes?" And that specific little move sort of took wind, and that's how I sort of became that's my new nickname now. So
the TRex lady, huh?
Yeah, I mean, all kids can do it. It requires no talent. It's a great little signature move. It's universal. People can do it anywhere.
And
interesting.
How has that impacted you? Like, what does that bring to your life?
I think, as silly as it is, that little move, I think what it embodies is really, even if it's just for a moment, what started happening was people all over the world were sending me like their little videos doing that silly move. And it was beyond that move. It was really just having a moment of like, let's remind ourselves to let loose once in a while. Like, let down the fears of judgment and just be free for a moment, express yourself, be you, have fun. It's just a gentle reminder that I mean, there was this one time I went on this business trip and we were out in the jungle, and the group I was with was all, like, some of them are multimillionaires and they run these big businesses, and they all wanted to do the dance. And I think there's a part of us inside all of us that are still children, and we have to nurture that childlike thing. And I remember, women on that trip were like, I just did not want to do this dance. I felt pressured. And they're like, as soon as I did it, I just felt like it was so much fun. Like, thanks for making us do that. And it's just a reminder of our inner child that needs to come out and play sometimes.
That's awesome. Yeah, our inner child needing to come out and play. And I think that the entire economic infrastructure as we know it shutting down is a great reminder that business and career isn't everything. Having joy, having that inner fun and nurturing that inner child. I love how you worded that is so important. So I appreciate you spreading that and sharing that into the world.
Totally. Talk about purpose in life. I guess that's what I can do, is just bring the inner child out in any situation. And I think that it can bring a little more balance, like you said, less, sometimes we need moments where we're not so focused on achieving the next thing, and more just like play in the moment. So.
And how did you get comfortable? Because the T-Rex dancing side is very atypical to the therapist, psychological. Yes. How did you get comfortable being like, I'm going to be me and be different and accept that? Because I think that's what holds people back a lot of times, right? Like, I have this certain role I play and it really, like, this one doesn't mesh here, so I don't ever do this. How did you balance that out? Or was that a conscious thought, or were you just like, I'm just going to go do this?
I think it was all the internal deprogramming that I worked on that allowed me to really free myself. And there were some posts where people were like, do not go on this account and read what people are saying. Like, it's not like I just went out there and everyone's like, oh, my inner child. Like, I got reamed on some of these accounts. But the truth is, I'm human. There's certain things that can affect me. When it comes to a silly dance move or like my personality, there's not much that could really stop me. It's not that judgment doesn't affect us. It's just that there's nothing that anyone could say that could stop that part of myself once I really unleashed it to ever, like, you could say the meanest thing and I would never let it stop me from doing that. So I think it's more just acknowledging if judgment hurts, acknowledging that everyone's going to put their opinions on you no matter what. It's just, you have the choice to let it stop you from being you, or you can feel it, be like, ooh, ouch, that was kind of hurtful, and keep doing you. And that's really where we get the power back from judgment.
And how has it parlayed? Has it helped your other businesses?
Yeah, I mean, that, interestingly enough, that is how I ended up really attracting in a lot of my clients. And I was like, that was not something I ever intended. When I think it's truly when you start being you and putting your creation or your dance moves or whatever it is that you feel called to put out, you have no idea what can unravel from it. Most of us are trained to believe, like, if I put out this video of me doing this, it will ruin my career, or I won't, but I really believe once we can get out of the fear and start being ourselves, that's when the magic can happen in our lives.
Yeah, I love it. And I think you're exactly right. I just number wise, how many people with master's degrees in psychology teach yoga and offer holistic healing? Then how many of them do it while dancing as T-Rex? Right? Like, you're sharing your story and you're making yourself relatable. And that's one of the things that we really stress to our community: share your story. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have the perfect story, and there's no such thing, but people relate to stories. You want to do business with stories that you enjoy and that you see yourself in. So I applaud you for bucking the trend and getting out there and just being you. And
thanks.
And what you do is, when you share your story and you be you, you allow us to be us, right? And that's what this whole community about, is finding the authentic you and just living in it. So I applaud you for it. I'm not gonna lie though, community. I'm not gonna lie. When Ali first sent me Margo's coming on, I pulled up her Instagram and saw the T-Rex. I was like, I'm going to need to know some backstory here.
It's fair. I don't even blame you.
Yeah, that was a good time. I remember that my youngest daughter is almost 17, so she's much more Instagram scene than I am. So I'm like, okay, what do you think of these? Like, do you know this? And she started laughing. So I was like, all right, it must work.
I'm glad I got her approval for this. I appreciate it.
Well, that's how I know I'm getting a little older when I go to my kids to screen things now, you know.
It's good you have them as a reference point, though.
Hey, I'm not afraid to admit it. It happens to all of us.
It does. It does. Well, I love what you guys are doing. And I think it's important to really create that space for people to share their stories and just really help people have that mindset of finding their own purpose in the world. Because we really only have one life. And I think it's beautiful that you guys support people to really find their highest calling.
Well, I think, honestly, we're just creating a space where it's okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how the world got this way or why we allowed it, but there's just so many places that shy away, and they want everybody in the box, and you stay there, and you can't dance like T-Rex if you want. And you know, like for me, you couldn't be a police officer and be a creative writer. There's just so many different things, and you know, I think Ali would agree. Like, we find our happiness when I get to be all these things.
Yeah.
You know, I get to be a dad that's happy, a dad that's sad. Like, I don't have to be perfect all the time. And that's really one of the biggest messages I get from your story and from our community is, like, accept that you're not perfect. Embrace that you're not perfect, because when we're imperfect, that's our uniqueness. And that's what 100%. Separates us.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly am a firm believer that the sloppier things get, the greater the purpose, you might want to say, for your greatness to come through. Like, if everything is just so perfect and cookie cutter, it's really hard to evolve, like I find at least. And it can be exhausting to try to live perfectly or not make mistakes. And it's more fun to just sort of let things get a little messier, or allow yourself to be every version, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whatever it looks like, and letting that actually can be what inspires people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For that, I agree wholeheartedly. And I was, when you were saying that messy, I was thinking back to being a kid. And like, your best moments as a kid isn't when you're pristinely dressed and your hair is perfect for that stereotypical family picture. It's right when you come in, you're covered in dirt. You're like, boy, you should see what I did today.
Yeah.
But we try to avoid that in life. We try to live this real clean life, and it's supposed to be messy, man. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. It's like allowing yourself to get in the mess and transform through it.
Yeah, and then not dwelling on it, right? Like, it happens, like, learn whatever you're supposed to learn and then get back into action, because guess what? There's another mistake you're supposed to make, but you got to get out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that Being You book really helped me to reframe. Sometimes I notice I'll be saying, like, oh, I made this mistake. But if I were to take away every person on the world, I'm like, was that even a mistake? Like, no, like, I just made a choice. I didn't know the outcome. So it's like, when you really even start to get beyond the mistake, it's really, the mistake is just out of fear of what other people think. Do we ever even really make mistakes? No, we're just making choices. We don't know the consequences. We're just, you know, human beings trying to navigate this life.
Yeah. What, at the end of the day, what truly is a mistake?
Because sometimes the worst things that can happen to us turn out to be like a whole new path for us to go down, or like it can, you know, evolve out some of the greatest gifts. So
yeah, I agree.
Love it.
I agree. Ali, what do you got?
Well, before we wrap up, Margo, I see here in your bio that you're currently working on meditation to develop greater heart and mind coherence and to manifest from a state of wholeness. Can you give us a couple brief pointers on what you're learning with this current work and your purpose?
Yeah. So a lot of that is through the study of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks about being matter versus matter. So in this lifetime, if we want to create something, a lot of the times it requires time, and it requires going back and forth from work, from, you know, like constantly. But if we can take a step to go inwards and just become pure consciousness, we can manifest from a state of sort of quantum physics and just this unknown, and from the divine and through this energy, where it's like something can appear in your life where it just seems like magic, instead of necessarily thinking we have to take all these steps and sort of force our will to make something happen. It's really coming from a state of being, like we all talked about in this podcast, is just sort of being ourselves and getting out of the past, getting out of the fear and into the present moment, and creating from a place of being instead of having to constantly do to just force something to happen. And when your heart and mind are coherent, that's when the magic can really happen and show up for us.
Yeah. There's some references to some magical beings, but for whatever reason, it seems to be in the East, in the Far East, India, China, where these, magical beings can manifest these things. I'm reading a book right now called Journey to Ixtlan. It's the third book in a series about Don Juan, written by Carlos Castaneda, and he was this Indian man, and they definitely have some sorcery, and that can be really out there for some people, but I think that we're kind of moving into this new era of realizing that our potential is so much more than what we've been used to in recent decades, to where there's a lot more that we can manifest. I think scientists say that we only use like 4% of our brains, so there's so much more to unlock. Cool.
Yeah, you're so right. And going inward is a way to sort of uncover that, like you talk about.
Well, I think that's big right now, right? We've taken away all the busyness in our life, the appointment we really didn't need, all the practices the kids really don't have to go to, right? With our schedules that we just pack from the minute we get up until we go to bed, to really reflect. And that's something I've struggled with. And I think, earlier in the year, one of my goals for myself was just allowing myself to be more, and not create my own value based on how busy was I from the minute I got up until I went to bed, but more the metric of how much did I enjoy the interactions I had. Instead of booking an appointment right after you, so that halfway through your conversation, I'm thinking about the next one I gotta have, or how long is the drive to get there, and just really being. So that's something I'm still working on, because my default is go, 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 and that's not always the best thing.
Yeah, I think just getting out of that fight or flight mode can really, and I think that requires a lot of stillness. And I think that's why meditation has constant meditation has helped me to get a little more present and unplug a little bit, and just so it's not that constant next thing. But it does take practice, because we are very much wired that way.
We are wired that way. And I think you do a really good job of representing both, Margo, at least from what I see of you do have a lot of that hustle, go-getter mentality, and are accomplishing a lot. And I think, at least since I've been following your stuff recently, I've kind of seen this more transition of more of the inward, more of the stillness. So I'm at least from what you show, right? So I'm excited to see the next chapters in the TRex lady era.
Yeah, you're so empathic, because that's kind of how my journey has been. I feel like last year was a lot of doing, and this year's been a little more inward, and it's kind of that's just kind of how life is. It's like a beautiful ebb and flow, and that's where our world is at right now. It's more in the inward journey. And so I just hope that everyone out there listening really can get the courage to take the time out, instead of focusing on all the disasters going around, just at least spending a little bit of time going inward and kind of lighting that torch to the darkness inside, and really just getting the courage to sit with themselves, and really like releasing whatever pain or traumas have happened in life, and taking a moment and recognizing how they might be able to transform that. And as we come out of quarantine, really be a maybe stronger, more kind, loving version of themselves, or maybe start to do something that they were afraid to do before.
I love that. The courage to take a time out, the courage to be still, right? Because I think sometimes, myself included, I think a lot of us sometimes choose to view that as something that's weak, or something that's like, oh no, I have to keep going, right? But having the courage to step into that is a great way to frame that. So thank you, Margo. Before we wrap up, do you have any specific ideas, practices, or anything that you want to make sure the community takes away from our time with you today?
I think the most transformational tips that have happened in my life is recognizing that I have the opportunity to choose if life is happening to me or for me. And so creating a life out of there's an opportunity in this. So whatever's happening in your life, if it's not what you like, looking for the gift in that, whether it's you becoming a greater version of you or it's you choosing something different, that's always my first step, is just looking at where you're at and what you don't like and reframing what's happening, reframing the story. And then also, like I said, just having the courage to go inward, because if you really want to make those shifts in your life, it requires that. It's just to be with you. And once you can get there, that's when a lot of magic can happen. Because once you're experience some degree of more self-love or wholeness within you, the outside world, it doesn't really matter what you have or what you don't have or what's not going your way or what's not working out, when you have that beautiful internal world.
Love it. Love it. And then where can our community go to find some more TRex lady content?
Oh, you can find me at Margo Miller INC. Margo with the T. So it's MARGOT Miller INC.
And you're on what, Instagram, TikTok?
Instagram and TikTok are my two go-tos.
Awesome. Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you on the show. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just an honor. And I don't want anybody to ever take that lightly. When somebody trusts you with their story, it's like one of the greatest things you can do, right? Is that trust and then being able to share it with our community. So we're so blessed to be in this position, and we thank you for giving us this chance.
Well, I appreciate you guys so much. I love what you're doing. Your community is so blessed to have you guys. And thanks again for including me.
All right, team, as we wrap up another episode of the On Purpose podcast, we are thankful for having you all on our journey. We want to announce new ways to include you and let you go deeper into our community. First off, we got the onpurposepodcast.com website where you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, get inside tips, and see what's coming up in the upcoming months. As well as our new launch is our Patreon account. We have 5 tiers where you can decide at what level you want to contribute to the podcast and the community, help support us, continue to push us forward and grow. And it's as little as 50 cents an episode or $2 a month, all the way up to $50 a month, depending on where you want to be. Perks of this are sneak peek episodes. You get the episodes quicker. You get to contribute on episodes. You get monthly Q&As with Ali and I and special guests. And you get to be a building block for our community as we continue to grow worldwide. With the release of Shelly Davies' episode, we are now international. And we're excited for the future leads us. So please fit in with us wherever you are comfortable. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We'll see you next week.